Thank you for joining us for the HR Observer podcast. I'm Nishanth. I lead the people advisory practice for Grant Thorton in the UAE, and it's a pleasure to be sitting in this fabulous office of JLL in Dubai with a great view, as you can see. And it's a great pleasure to be speaking to Kabira, who's the head of HR for Middle East, Africa, and Turkey for JLL. Thanks for joining us, Kabira.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you for coming to our office.
It's always good to be hosted here. The reason we thought we would do this is because we've been hearing a lot about and talking to a lot of our clients about elements of values in an organization, culture, how some of it connects with the demand in the region for actually bringing a lot of diversity into the office space, into the workforce. And Emiratization is another aspect that, it's one is mandated, but it's also a lot of organizations are seeing it as a value driver. And we've had these chats before as well. So one of the things I thought was it would be wonderful to hear the perspective from an organization that's globally known for workplace, for values and culture as well. And wanted to understand how you see it, what your journey around it has been as well. So that's the reason we kind of got this all arranged.
No, it's a interesting perspective, and as you said, we've been speaking about it. And when you reached out to me to have this conversation, you would have seen that I was passionate last time, so I jumped onto the idea of having an ability to speak and chat in general about it, right? Now, as an organization, as JLL, as you rightly said, is very strong on people. That's one of our core pillar strategy.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what attracted me to JLL in the first instance. Their mission to be better for the future in real estate, the core pillar of people. And when I say people, there are several elements which go with it. But something which I wanted to stress in terms of as an HR, how we contribute to it is, of course, everything has evolved, right?
Yeah.
We have moved along a long way, but
Correct.
HR also has evolved in a journey.
Yeah.
And with my little bit of gray hair, you can understand that I've been in this field for some time now. So we've grown from an administrative HR support to actually being hand in hand with business to drive the strategy. And that comes in with a lot of HR's transformation, which JLL is very much into forefront and running into it. For instance, automation, using AI tools, thinking about the culture. And how does culture make it much more effective to retain staff? Diversity. We've had our 5-year strategy on diversity, equity, and inclusion set up recently, which, again, setting it up from the board, the global board, and then being driven are some of the statements which one would like to believe that that's driven from the top. There's a belief there which makes any talent to be attracted.
Right. I mean, brilliant, right? I think this is known, and a lot of us, I've worked in Hong Kong, in India. I've known JLL for this in all the regions, and it's good to know. I was very curious when you were speaking about a lot of this, right? And you said some of this actually attracted you to the organization. What was your journey really? I mean, just taking a step back, how did you start off in the field of HR? I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of culture values in the past as well, and some of the other HR strategic elements you spoke about. And how did you kind of come into JLL?
Yeah, so it's been very interesting, and it may sound cliche, but honestly, at the time when I was doing my management, or rather when I was actually choosing what field I should go, I'm an Indian, so you could understand that either you do science, commerce, or arts, right?
Medicine or engineering.
Or engineering, or a doctor, if you're very, very... So obviously, when I did my business management, my professor picked it up. And he told me that you would do very well in HR.
Really?
And he gave me more insight to it. And he nudged me for a career. And I took it as a challenge because I was, of course, he was my coach, he was my guru. So I thought that's a good challenge, let me try. I got through a multinational organization and their graduate program. And I think I would advise any young talent, if you're looking out to start a career and you want to really explore opportunities and are not very sure, which is very, very okay to be, graduate programs does help you to firstly enter into a corporate organization, give you the ability to learn on the job, and also think about whether that's the right career for you. And I guess that was my journey. So that allowed me, and I did not look back. I think he spotted it. I took on the challenge,
Yeah.
and we moved on. And today I'm here.
No, that sounds like, that
Yeah.
would have happened. And for me, I mean, it was a bit more fluke.
Okay.
It was almost me looking at Wikipedia and saying there are 4 things: marketing, operations, finance, and HR. It looks like the last one would be easier, but it didn't work out like that, right? We ended up dealing with a lot more than in HR as we do, right? We deal with business, like you said, we deal with the numbers, and then we deal with the hearts and minds.
Absolutely.
And contrary to a lot of what people think, it's, HR, they're just going to do something soft. We have to present the hard numbers at the end of the day, but at the same time, we are the ones who are really driving a value system to the organization and holding it up, holding it accountable in certain situations, right? How does that work in JLL?
That's a very good point, and I wanted to stop you, but I said let me finish what you're. So something which I think we have evolved, and my role has JLL has helped me to evolve in it. I partner very strongly with my finance partners. Okay, so the data coming out in terms of the revenue, the margin, the productivity is very core to driving people's strategy. And then we have our dashboards, our analytical tools to make sure that I have the right data to do a resource planning activity, or when a business case is being set up or a strategy is being set up. And I guess when I started using these tools and data and I put it forward to the business, they realize the value of HR and how we can really support them from the initial stage of their planning. So that is where I would say data is core, key. And it also gives you a lot of credibility in what you're saying, right? If I just had to, I'll give you an example. When I sit down with my business and we talk about attrition rates, so we spoke up recently about attrition rates, and I shared the rates, and for a very long time, we had been in a single-digit numbers, but as you know, this region is growing. We definitely lose sometimes talent. But talent we lose to our clients most of the time, because we are we are very hot in terms of being seen as people who train
Develop
well
talent,
and give a good exposure, right? So we do lose talent to clients, but again, we also have stories where they've come back. And something in the data, when I was looking at the attrition data and I was sharing with the business, what we realized is that majority of the time, the people had not started thinking about it for more than 3 months. Just 3 months down the line, they thought about it, which means they have been fully engaged and not actively looking for a job. The people who left mainly because it was a very big jump in salary, which was huge given it was a client role.
Understand.
Or they've left because they have been in a consultant firm and they wanted their resume to have a client side of it.
Absolutely.
So, again, giving this sort of a data gives the business an understanding as to why we are losing talent. Then I also look at data from the age bracket perspective, or from the years of service they have been. And what we have seen is that mid-management, when they are in the 5 to 6 years or 7 years, we've lost more people. Then we've lost in the early or the and when we went deep
go back
dive,
to the logic, right?
We see that that's the age when you think about your career. Should I take some other experience? They're not that committed from the family perspective, perhaps. So they have the ability to jump and go to another country, do some. So again, these all helps business to then decide in terms of when they're planning.
No, absolutely. So there are hard financial numbers, and then there are these numbers which, when you put it in context of what's happening, you get a sense. And I think, in my experience of consulting for organizations, we used to obviously start with this grand yearly engagement survey, right? But now it's come down to a lot of bite-sized listening. Not bite-sized learning, but bite-sized listening as an organization, where you're hearing out people in terms of the smaller things that they're saying, the symbols that they're showing of how the culture is actually treating them, right? Picking up those small sound bites from them, but also running official surveys, listening to managers when they speak to the skip level employees.
Absolutely.
To say, if you remove the manager in question, then what is the employee saying? Is it different? Right? And all of that is still data. It's great data. And then when you put that in the context of where you want to go culturally, there's a lot that's kind of changing, right? So one is employees who've left, but even employees who are there today, how do you listen to them? What are some of the early warning kind of, how does that work? Basically?
So some of the things what you said is absolutely in place. We have people surveys which we run. We are always open to listening to what we have heard in the people survey. So even the questionnaire gets customized if required to the extent. Bite size and skip level is very critical. We even moved our performance appraisal into not having annually or 6 monthly. It's more, it's fluid. It is more employee led than an employer led. So you decide how often you want to speak to your manager. You set up the meeting. You have your agenda and go for it. So trying to give the employees the empowerment to drive their own career. And also when you have individuals in the organization, what are they looking for? What do you hear most of the time? It's about their career opportunities and what transparency we can give in terms of the opportunities they can look for.
The growth that they want.
So something which we did as part of our tools for the employees is our tool, the people tool, which we have Workday, has the ability to functionality to put that you're open for new roles. Okay, so that helps employees to always be open, which is again so the manager is aware, but doesn't matter because you're being transparent that you are looking. That doesn't mean you're going to drop everything and walk away.
But it's a process to it.
Secondly, we have the Workday tool. When we post any roles, it is posted internally first. So it allows individuals to look for that. We recently, just as some of the numbers which I was looking at, we've had more than 20 plus people who have moved out, who have come to UAE from other places in this year, and around 6 to 10 have moved out to a different place. Internal rotations have happened.
Globally, yes.
Globally, there is much more. I'm just talking about the UAE region per se. So on a global level, it's much more. We have a very, very established global mobility process and a policy which allows the individual to have a good experience and also have a conversation as to what all it takes. Because when you move a family, it's a big thing. And you want to know upfront as to what all, how will JLL support that. So we definitely believe that you join JLL not for a role, but to have a career and a journey with JLL. Now, whether that is within the role which you have and you grow upwards, or you grow horizontally, or you go to another country within of JLL and you take a role. So that is how we think we have been able to retain a lot of our talent, and very proud that we have had more than if I have to look just 5 or 10 years back, the leadership who's there on the top, I think we have retained more than 80% of the leaders who have been in the organization and been continuing to grow. Not that they've been stagnant, but I guess they have stayed is because they've seen growth and we have empowered them to have that sort of...
It's just fascinating to hear. We as consultants are notorious for putting frameworks and theories around things. But to actually hear this, it could resonate with the way I would frame this up. In terms of one, how leaders behave and what they do more than what they even say, right? And you will see here in JLL, you will see leaders moving around, right? So when you see that happening, you're empowered, saying, yes, I can do this too. That's one. Two, like you said, there are systems in place which actually enable this or empower this. Clicking on things like you said, the fact that the tool allows you to do it is a big thing. The policy allows you to do it. Third, like I was mentioning, the symbols around it, right? So right from your workplace, which we'll explore as well in terms of how you do your offices. You do this for clients as well and for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right from how it feels to get into office, collaborate around with people, and also everything else that it's there, but you're not told of it. It's the intangibles that you feel when you're in working.
Exactly. Here. So that's the idea. The culture, I think the culture comes from, of course, we have our values, which are very, very strong. We strongly believe in teamwork, excellence, and, all the time we are talking about that, and ethics, right? But the idea is not to talk about it. And you touch upon the leadership behaviors and what and how. I just wanted to touch on that. We strongly believe in that, and we recently launched our leadership behaviors, which we speak openly, in order not to make it for people to speak about it, but how they can use that to demonstrate in the ways what they do. So to your point, whether it is giving employees empowerment to do their job, including them in any of the projects, prioritizing it, simplifying it. One of our leadership behavior is simplification.
That's fantastic.
And I think today's world, which is becoming
need a lot
complex
more
and complex, you just want simplification, right?
Correct.
You just want
Absolutely.
very clear
Absolutely.
understanding about what is to be delivered.
True.
And of course, being future ready.
Right.
I don't think we can lift or not think about what's coming in future because it's moving at a very fast pace. You don't want to be like any
left behind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And lose talent because they felt that you are not up to it.
Correct.
Today, we are starting a program called Gen Z Advisor Group. And again, that's only coming from that, okay, you from the top have understanding, we read books, we go for networks, but there is that Gen Z mindset. Have you tapped into it? Are they aligned with what you're bringing in? Are they challenging you rightly to think about doing something differently?
So putting them at the center of this conversation.
Exactly.
That's wonderful.
So that's the idea. And I've had some very interesting conversations when we were, some of them nominated, so we wanted to make sure why their interest is, so we were doing an interview process with them and just a casual interview, but just getting to know them. And some of the things what they shared was, it gives you an understanding that we have this ability of this office setup where you can, it's a hybrid working, right? Again, that hybrid working, I did not realize is how important to Gen Z because they feel then they are trusted, they are empowered, and they have the ability to make a call when they have to be in office. At the same time, as we as leaders have to have that trust that we are okay with that, and we know that they will deliver if, wherever they are.
So true. So micromanagement is not the way in any. I mean, we all learn this as leaders, right? We're at a stage where we suddenly realize that why are we fighting for a resource with somebody when all we should do is empower that resource together to grow and probably do both. We don't know what someone can actually manage.
And sometimes they stay for that flexibility versus compensation, because I guess there's a lot on sustainability. They look for what you do on sustainability. They look on whether there is a flexibility. They look on how much you give them empowerment and accountability. And of course, compensation is important. But I think it's the overall package which they look for rather than just looking for. And that's how you bring in loyalty and probably you get them to retain in the organization.
Oh, that's fascinating, right? And I think having a great package and a boss who's checking in on you 5 minutes and seeing if you're in your desk or not.
I don't think that's anymore there. And in our office, you can't do it because I'll tell you why. We don't have a dedicated desk for anyone.
For anybody, okay.
So I know, and I wouldn't take away anything from what we had earlier days, but what is now is you have that flex environment. I'm coming in for a short period. I sit in the collaboration area. I'm coming in to do some deep work. There's a dedicated area. You go and do that. You need a big screen. You use that. But not necessarily every day you go and sit at the same desk. So giving that sort of a flexibility gives.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Great. I think as usual, it's just wonderful hearing you out and on some of these things. The experience one from your career, but also what JLL does across the region is just fascinating to hear. I wanted to touch on diversity, right? And when we say diversity, many people go into cliches saying, oh, it's only the man-woman thing, or is it a race thing? We believe in Grant Thorton, it's much more, the diversity itself is much more diverse. You need to talk about skills, where people are coming from. There's just a lot that goes on when you have a diversity conversation. What is JLL's take on it? How do you kind of,
Yeah, so I said in the earlier thing about we setting up a 5-year strategy. So as you can understand, it's something on the core of our agenda. And diversity, equity, and inclusion is important. So again, coming to diversity, it's not only about diversity, it's also about equity and inclusion.
Correct.
Right? So when we look at it, we definitely look at it in different perspectives. One, you look at it diversity from the different ethnicity and nationality you can bring. In this part of the world, we are able to do it very, we can consciously do it. We can build that in because we have that talent available with diverse, nationality and ethnicity. That's one way of looking at it. Second is the age. So we have internship, graduate programs, and then you take up. So you bring in that young talent who is then growing with you. That's the second way of looking at it. Third way is, as you said, the skills. Depending on the skills you're looking for. Now, again, we haven't been there are a lot of our business lines which would not only look at someone coming from a real estate background.
Yeah.
Because I think that shake-up and that challenge and different
Absolutely.
mindset brings in a good
100%. Mix.
view
Yeah.
to look at it. And then, of course, male gender is something
Sure.
which you would
Of
look at.
course.
And then when you look at diversity and how do you do it in the organization, there are different ways of doing it. One is when you're interviewing, you make sure your managers are equipped
Yep.
with the right mindset of interviewing,
Sure.
this in a holistic
Sure.
way. The unconscious biasness is removed. We have some trainings on
Sure.
that which we try to give the young managers
Sure.
who take on the role of hiring and they get
Sure.
to understand it. We make our talent acquisition partners aware of it, that when you're bringing in CVs, because they're the ones who are
Eventually
representing,
screening
right? So
is-
when they bring in CVs, they bring in that diversity, so
Sure.
there is a good,
Yeah.
CVs
See, and the
around
bias
to
goes
see.
out. Yeah,
correct?
absolutely.
So that's that. And then when you come at the leadership level, we have more than 50% of our leaders who are female. So and from different nationalities.
Right.
So that and different age groups. So I guess that gives you a good, inclusive, holistic conversation when you are sitting or discussing any of the critical topics. So different ways, but these are some
Correct.
of the things which we try to.
Correct. No, wonderful. And I think that's best practice is
Yeah.
what we hear.
Yeah.
We also follow something very similar. We at least have more than two people in the selection process
Absolutely.
at a minimum. So at least the human bias as such is eliminated from beginning because they're unconscious, right? So that definitely is there, a wonderful thing. Here also what we are hearing organizations now do is, when I only came in a year ago into this region, right? But then I was always following up on the trends in HR, and one of the things which was nationalization in the region. Given that the current working population, many of the governments feel they're not well represented, and they don't necessarily feel the need to work and join the corporate workforce. There's a mission to kind of enable that to happen so that the countries become more self-reliant in many areas of work. A lot of our clients initially were looking at this as a mandate, as a fine, as a challenge, right? In terms of saying, oh, I need to somehow cover up for this. And that actually led to a lot of malpractices in the region, wherein people ended up hiring, say, expats only in the free zone, right? So creating another legal entity to escape fines. They would have people come in from Nafis and actually not join the workforce, just be given an offer, right? So circumventing has been one of the routes which the government has kind of caught on to and said that, look, that doesn't work. What we've heard some of our most successful clients do in this is actually change the whole perspective and philosophy altogether and say that this is actually my value driver. Emiratization, for example, is a value driver. I'm going to derive value from hiring and attracting, the locals. And the power of that network and what it does for the goodwill, for the employer brand, is way beyond what you can actually imagine in terms of the fines you're paying and so on. So any perspectives on that from your side? And you're dealing with the region as a whole, so you would look at Saudization and some of the other stuff.
Yeah. So firstly, I wasn't aware that you should think that way. It's when you say people hiring. I mean that's absolutely something should not come as an organization into your mind. And I've been in this region for a long time and worked with other organizations here as well, where I was part of a Future Leader program for Emiratisation.
Sure.
So I definitely strongly believe that firstly there are very good talent which look to work for a private organization versus working for government organization. And second thing is you have to give back to the community, and this is part of that role as well. That you would have, and they stay in this country. They are the nationals of this country. So you would want to develop them, right? So it is part of it complements them.
100%.
Something what we did was when we started hiring Emiratis, obviously there are different elements which comes into play. Sometimes it is a pressure from the family that they or their peers or their friends. So it took us some time
to understand that dynamic.
So we had to educate them
right.
In terms of that it is not that different. You also have a career opportunity here. You will also feel very comfortable. It's you have the, I mean, you don't need to feel at all different, and you can have an open conversation, open door policy. So it took some time for us to get initially, but once we got the initial batch in, I guess then it was an easy ride because then they became our
The
ambassadors.
ambassadors, yeah.
And they realized that, oh, this is a nice place to work. I know everyone's very friendly.
Yeah.
There's a career opportunity. I can look at doing something
Sure,
different once
sure.
I've settled. So that was the way I think we used it. The second is they generally like to know whether the organization is happy to invest in them in terms of their education,
Career and growth, yeah.
flexibility if there's a required for them to sometimes be able to not come to work
Correct.
or go early. Career progression,
Yes.
how often they can be looked at for career.
Sure.
They're not being hired for meeting the quota,
Exactly.
but they're being hired to be developed
Just
in
like
the
anybody else,
organization.
basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So once they got that comfort, and we had few stories. Now, when I spoke to you last time, I spoke to you about one of the person who was at the reception who's now at talent acquisition.
Yes.
I have another story now who's moved to a client side.
Okay, wow.
So it's
Right.
I'm glad
Each
that
story builds on its legacy, right?
It's building on, and we are building on. We have some of our great Emiratis who are sitting on the client side.
Yes.
We have now one moved to the client because she came and she spoke to me, and we were having a chat, and she said, "Look, I enjoy working what I'm doing, but what if I want to look at anything?" And as I said, you have the work day, look at opportunities. If something works for you,
Absolutely.
And it worked for
Absolutely.
her. So I guess, and don't get me wrong, of course I do lose sometimes, and that is very natural. So it's
That's
part
with
of
any
the
other talent,
process.
right?
But I'm glad that we've been able to retain most of them.
Yes.
I think we're around 7 to 8% right now of our population, which is, and we are growing, and we have a big plans for next year as well. But giving them a career path, giving them ability to have that flexibility, making them part of the story is where I think you are able to then.
100%. And after I spoke to you the last time, when I had gone around asking these questions, I understood that the talent acquisition angle is a phenomenal angle, right? We've had so many successful Emiratis in talent acquisition teams in the region.
Correct.
One of our competitors actually did that. A big bank has the same thing, a team in talent acquisition, where Emiratis firstly found a good role for some of them for themselves, and then they became that ambassador.
Correct.
They took it upon themselves to say that, look, this is not a bad organization, and they went around convincing their community that why don't you give it a try, and there are options here and so on.
To add to that one of who we are speaking about, she then went across to Saudi to do a graduate program assessment there, and she got me Saudi graduates, and we launched this graduation program there. And that's another. So there again, we have our graduate program, and we're running with the Saudis, and they are having this ability to rotate and learn more. And as I said in my earlier part of the conversation, that graduate programs are generally a good platform if someone is looking to explore for what is right for them. So we do give that platform as well. And in fact, we start from the internship. We have got good stories where we've partnered with some of the universities and hired them at internship level. And then they've gone back, finished their studies and come back to us. So, again, it's different ways. And then we also do something at the school level. We also encourage them when they, the schools have at the GCSE where they have this 1 week job shadow.
Right. We've done that as well, yes.
So we bring them in to give them the exposure. Of course, they don't work at that time, but they get the exposure.
They attend meetings and they understand what is this all
more
about.
Job shadowing sort of a thing.
And this is across, right? And it's not just an Emiratization element. It's a talent incubation in general.
Absolutely.
And that's worked wonders for us as well. When you they say catch them young, but essentially you go to them and show them what is the world of opportunities that they can look at. And that's where our people become the more important representatives of our culture.
True.
You don't want them coming in and actually looking at people losing it on each other and saying, sorry, this is not for us.
True, absolutely.
So, fantastic. So, kind of coming to the close of this conversation, we'll obviously keep chatting, but for the viewers of the podcast, 2 questions for you, right? I'll start with the first one. This is a bit around when you said future ready in the beginning. So, being ready with future skills, and actually enabling those skills to be developed in the organization. So just for your information, I'll share that with you. Grant Thorton wrote an ebook with People Strong recently on how do you have a skills-based organization. And what we really spoke there about was, it's clear that you need future skills taxonomies, but what are the enabling elements around it? Learning was one of them, wherein people can easily access bite-sized learning is one thing. But also performance management. How do you give feedback on a skill you've just shown at work, like in a week or something, and structures and all of that, right? But we'll be very, very keen to hear your perspective on what you've done in JLL around skills, learning, and some of that.
So this is a very interesting question because this is a hot topic for us. Something which we have already done is we are moving away from just the job description to moving into skill-based
Sure.
learning, right? And to do that, what we recently did for some of our business liners, we worked around globally, take a business line, what are the 5 or 6 skills one needs to have to deliver.
Sure.
It could be at any level because skills can then have the maturity levels at different, right?
Proficiencies.
And we assessed individuals across the globe on that, the self-assessment and the manager assessment, and we got the gaps.
Yep.
Now we are, next step, what we're doing is we've got the report and the dashboards and the data from it. And as I said, data is important. So we got the data.
Correct.
And now we're looking at where the gaps are based on what the individual thinks, what the manager thinks. And then now my training plan for that skills is going to be based on that. So making it very, very relevant, making sure that those skills which we have identified key for our talent, giving them the opportunity to upskill based on the knowledge we have. So that's one thing. The second thing the learning and development team are doing is what are the future roles which will coming, and are our employees ready for it or not? And if not, what are we doing to help them? I know ChatGPT is something which is very, but do you know we have JLL ChatGPT?
Oh, you do? Okay.
And we have people, we have been training them on it.
Nice.
So we have an online training, we have a webinar where the trainers, the facilitators come with some cases and show you how you can use this to become more efficient. Of course, the human touch cannot go. And I personally believe that you cannot just copy paste.
You can never.
Because then everyone can see through. It is, people have become such clever that they see through. So my advice is that yes, you have to be efficient. So use the tool, do not ignore it, but use it to the right level that you don't lose yourself. That's
Absolutely.
how I would say.
That's brilliant actually, and that's something we're all dealing with, right?
Yeah,
I mean, in interviews you see people are not looking at you anymore.
Oh my God, that is something I've been catching on so often. And the next thing I would tell my panel person, firstly, I prefer not to do on the, you would call them, but sometimes you can't. So the first thing I say is, did you see that eye movement? It's becoming very obvious now.
Very interesting. So we look at it as an AI as an intern essentially. Right, or a bunch of interns who are way more efficient and can suddenly learn a lot more, so stuff like that. But you're so right. I fully align with the
this is something I teach my children as well. That I know you guys are much more pro on all these technologies and different tools and
but
websites.
Don't lose yourselves.
But then you are not thinking. Firstly, you're not using your brain, so you're going to somewhere lose that out. And secondly, you're not bringing yourself. How will people know you? So I don't think that's, to that level.
So speaking of children and the up-and-coming talent, and they're also probably joining the workforce, but what is your advice to the young HR professional today who's coming up with passion around this field? We've seen a lot now over the last few years. You've seen a lot. So how would you want them to kind of look at their career? What do you think they should focus on? Because there's a lot of noise around them. What are the 3-4 things you would really ask them to focus on?
So as an HR, I think you would get the gist from a lot of things what I said, but I would say primarily you have to be aware of what's coming. So you always keep yourself upskilled on the technology, on the requirements. So you are
ahead of the game.
I understand when you're young and you're coming in, you still don't have that, but that is what you should target for building that knowledge of the in-depth technical knowledge, which doesn't go away. That's important. But the human touch, empathy is very important.
Absolutely.
I think we as HR are someone who have to have that balanced approach in our ways of doing things. We are the gatekeepers of the organization, as they say, but we are also someone who can understand our employees and their pulse much better. So having that empathy, I would say, is the key thing. Being network, try and have a mentorship, which is again very powerful. We have it in JLL. We have a very strong tool which we give employees an ability to have mentors. So mentorship, network is very important. At the end of the day, it's the passion. It's the passion which drives it. But you have to have the ability to be agile.
Yes. And not get stuck on certain things.
In today's world, and even at my age and my level, I think I believe in the 3 A's very much strongly, and I would like to share that. And probably that's something which I can leave back with them. Be agile,
Yeah.
be adaptable,
Uh-huh.
and be authentic.
Okay.
I guess if you do that, people will see through that.
Yeah.
And even if you don't know, even if you make mistakes,
Yeah.
I think you have a scope to grow into it. No one comes perfect. Human error is always possible.
True.
But if you have the right intent,
True.
you will grow through it.
Brilliant. I mean, like, my brain is really awake now with all of this thinking.
Thank you.
I think we've really dealt on, spent time on a lot of good topics, and like I said, it's been great listening to you. So with this, we'll probably kind of get this podcast to a close. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation. I'm sure all of you are going to do that as well when you listen to it. Thanks so much again
My
for
pleasure.
spending the time. It was wonderful
It's
talking
something
to all
which
of
is very
this.
close to my heart, so I can speak for hours, I guess.
Sure.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks.